Tell us a little bit about yourself on how you became, really with pro football and doing the PSI work and all the stuff that you're doing right now. And where did you really see yourself after graduating from college?
So I started with fantasy football, probably like you guys way back when, on Sporting News when I was in middle school. But obviously as social media became big and got on Twitter, saw that fantasy football was pretty big on there, and it was a really fun and unique community and a lot of cool people to talk to. Just really got involved and started kind of growing my account through there. At the same time, I was growing up in my career as an analyst. And one day the 2 and 2 just got put together. I was like, what if I take what I've learned in my day-to-day and apply it to something I really enjoy, which is fantasy football, and see what I can come up with. Because I've always enjoyed player evaluating. When I initially was going to school, I wanted to do sports management, and my dream job as a child was to be the general manager of the San Francisco Giants. That's what I wanted to be. Clearly that didn't happen, but I always thought that I was always really intrigued by player evaluation and how to get involved in that. And so this was kind of my first foray into that space, but obviously for football. And as I looked across the space, I thought the most interesting position was wide receivers. It seemed like people had probably the most, it just always generated kind of the most buzz around that position because so many people had different takes on wide receivers because they were really the hardest to kind of pin down, right? I think with running backs, you can see a lot through film, and it's pretty easy to are they athletic? Do they have breakaway speed? Can they catch the ball? Yes. Okay, yeah, they're probably going to be pretty good. With wide receivers, it can be, you think you've got someone who's really, really good, and then they don't pan out. The question that intrigued me and what I would set out to go find. So that's how I got started, and I've been doing it for 5 years, really enjoying it.
So I want to ask, I see those autographed helmets in the background. Do you have,
Yes.
what are some of the backstory beyond that? How did you get all those?
Exactly what we're here to discuss today. So PSI, big on doing wide receivers. And so all of those are wide receivers back there, all who have I either really liked as prospects, and most of who've gone on to succeed. Just ignore the Jalen Reagor right there. But you've got Cortland Sutton, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson. I figured I'd get in and invest early. I'm like, if I'm finding these guys early, might as well invest and see if I can turn it around and flip it in a few years for, double my money or something.
Oh, you definitely will. I mean, they autographed it. It's going to be worth something.
So I figured it'd look cool. It'd be a good backdrop. Great for, obviously, shows like this. And it's always a good talking point at work as well, now that we're working from home.
I liked Reagor too, so I was wrong on that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I was big wrong on Reagor. It happens. No one's perfect.
No one's perfect at all. That's going to be a question we get back to later. But anyway, when you look at wide receivers, when you're doing your player analysis, besides obviously like the speed and the hands, because that's what everyone's going to look at, is there a stat you look at and go, this is going to be misleading, this guy isn't this good, or that's something that's going to be an eye-popping thing that this guy's going to excel in the NFL, or is it really just as simple as this guy's breakaway speed and hands, and he's going to just be amazing?
I'm not a film evaluator by any means, but I think the thing people talk about the most that I think matters the least, or is maybe overblown. I won't say matters the least because it does matter to some degree, but is overblown is route running. A lot of guys can make it look really good, but when they get to the NFL, all of a sudden, that wasn't what separated them. So I think that's the really biggest talking point. And I think Jerry Jeudy's a really good one for that example, because when he was coming up through college, all you heard for about 3-4 years, however 3 years he was at Alabama, through the Devy community was he's the greatest route runner of all time. You were hearing comparisons to like, he's going to be the next great thing, can't miss, blah, 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 blah. And every time I went and looked at the stats and just looked at him, I'm like, he looks fine. Like, I'm not going to not like him, but there wasn't anything there that blew me away. And he's gotten in the NFL and he's been just fine. He hasn't been, he's not blowing the doors off like Jamar Chase that comes in and
he's also dealing with a lot of injuries. I mean, Jeudy has not been healthy since he's come into the league, and that's been a huge problem. His health. I think if he plays a full season, actually has a quarterback that could throw to him. Could you imagine if Aaron Rodgers goes over there and actually throws him the ball? Do you know how good Jerry Jeudy will be?
I don't think I would still put him in the top 12.
I
I
don't
think
think
he
so.
would. I think he would go on to be like a top 24 receiver and for sure have a good season. But he still isn't going to reach that peak hype that they gave him in college. And that's what I'm evaluating him against, right? Like if you're going to say he's the greatest of all time, here's Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase coming and blowing the doors off. Where's that? That's what you hyped up. So if you were saying that he was going to do that, he already failed at that level, right? He could still go on to have some success, but I just don't see that prospect. So, and I think injuries or his potential for injuries was something that another analyst, I don't know if you've ever heard of Fusu Vu, or I think now his name is Devi Fusu. I might be butchering his Twitter handle, so apologies if he's listening. But he's kind of called that out, and that was always something that caught my attention. And then here you are in the NFL, and he's kind of battling some injuries. Maybe fluky, but it's happening.
We are talking to Pro Football PSI player evaluator Miguel Chapeton. Miguel, this year's draft, this isn't one of those draft classes for wide receivers or quarterbacks or anything that really stands out that you could say, hey, that guy is going to be the next big superstar, the next Julio Jones, the next Calvin Ridley, or A.J. Brown, or any of these top end. But those are the usual drafts that some of these guys become those type of players when it's not a big draft. When you look at like Chris Olave or a Jameson Williams or a Treylon Burks or a David Bell, or how about a Drake London? What stands out going into this draft with all these top-end wide receivers that really you think could be a transition? These guys could transition into the NFL.
I'm still very early on in my process, so I'm at that point. For me, December, January is probably when I typically look at a class, I'm at my lowest, where I'm like, I don't know about this class. But I agree with everything you just said. There isn't that star stud. Like, you don't have a Saquon Barkley that, I mean, you could be a first time watching football and you watch that guy play and you go, yep, he's a star. Or Jamar Chase. We all knew he was going to be a star when he stepped a foot on the field. So this class lacks that elite talent. But I think there's a strong core of really good talent that could end up becoming elite. So I definitely agree with your point there. And guys that really stand out to me right now are the Drake Londons, the Treylon Burks. I actually didn't think I was going to be high on Jameson Williams, but right now I'm actually like, ooh, I actually really like this guy. Really unfortunate he tore his ACL, so wishing him a speedy recovery.
It's not going to matter. He's going to be a first-round draft pick no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, he'll get drafted, but yeah, just want to see him make that speedy recovery, get on the field in year one, and hopefully he doesn't lose that 4.3 speed. But what really stands out to me is right now they all broke out at an early age. That's one thing that is really important for a wide receiver profile. You want guys who break out before the age of 21. Are you guys all familiar with breakout age? I don't want to be preaching to the choir if you guys already are. I just want to make sure, okay, see some head nods. And that's really just indicative of, right, if they're good early on, then they're likely, the younger you are, probably the better you're going to be, right? It's like if you've got a kid who's playing Mozart at age 5, like, yeah, that kid's probably going to be really amazing at playing the piano as he grows older. That same concept, right? So they all check that box. Their dominator rating. So what percentage of the passing offense do they take up? You want them to be at least a third of that offense, and they've all done that, if not exceeded it. Drake London and Treylon Burks, looking off to my sheet over here, were over 40%. So that's really good. And the important thing, one of the things that really matters the most is, were they the number one guy on their team in any given year? And I measure that by yards. So did they lead their team in receiving yards in any given year? What the data suggests there is that I want to say it was like 95% of all wide receivers that have gone on to succeed were all the number one guy on their team at one point in time in college. They don't have to do it every year, but they just have to do it once. The guys that never do it usually don't go on to have very much success at all. So that's one way to quickly, just if you want to trim some of the fat, that's a quick way to do it. And all those guys they're checking a lot of the early boxes that you like to look for. Next is going to be the combine, the pro days. How do they come in athletically? Because then we can start looking at comps, start looking at, all right, is Chris Olave the next? Maybe you guys know better. Who is he being compared to at the moment? Anyone?
I don't know. I don't know who.
Robert Woods, I've heard.
Woods, really?
Robert Woods, I've heard for Olave.
He's faster than Robert Woods.
I know that, but they're kind of very similar wide receivers. Where Olave's not really the big deep threat. Yeah. I've heard that. I've heard Adam Thielen. There's a couple.
Oh, if he's Adam Thielen, it'd be pretty damn good. If he's
that would be nice.
Yeah, I don't think he's Adam Thielen.
So we can start looking at those athletic profiles to see, all right, now who do they really kind of measure up against? And the fun fact is that actually all of the stuff that happens at the combine really doesn't matter all that much.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone a few years ago, DK Metcalf in the 3-cone drill. Oof, boy, was everyone on Twitter just giving him hell for having the worst 3-cone of all time. And then here he is blowing up the NFL. The reason is because of none of those events actually matter for predicting success. In a silo, if you just look at the 40-yard dash or the 3-cone drill or the bench press, whatever, none of those matter in isolation.
But wait a second. When you were just mentioning DK Metcalf, if it wasn't for his combine, DK Metcalf wouldn't have been drafted in the second round. I mean, some people were looking at him as a first-round draft pick at some points. I think before the combine, they were thinking the third, maybe early fourth-round draft pick. He moved up after the combine, running that, what did he run, a 4.3? The guy's built like a tight end, and he runs. He tried to run for the Olympics. He was in the Olympic trials. I mean, it's unbelievable, the athletic ability that this man has.
So from like a analytical standpoint, if I'm just looking at any one of these events, you can't. It doesn't give any indicator that this guy's going to be more successful than that guy, because the ranges of all the wide receivers that have ever gone through the combine, I mean, you're all over the place. Jerry Rice, for example, is like a 4.79 40. And then you've got DK Metcalf at 4.3. I mean, those are completely polar opposites, yet they both saw success.
John Ross has the record, and he's nothing.
And Jerry Rice.
Right, and John Ross and Henry Ruggs and all these guys.
Jerry Rice also has
$1 million.
Jerry Rice has unbelievable hands. He was one of he never dropped the ball. I mean, we talk about Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald is one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game because he never dropped the ball. Same thing, Anquan Boldin, another guy that never dropped the ball. These guys, you don't have to have speed in the NFL to see. Now it's become a speed league. But when they played, all you needed was hands and really, I would say, and they never wore gloves either. None of them wear gloves. Like all these wide receivers, the Odell Beckhams of the world with that one-handed catch. You won't see these guys. You never saw Jerry Rice wear gloves, ever. You never saw Anquan Boldin wearing gloves, okay? You never saw that. These guys played.
That man was a menace.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different game now. I mean, it is all speed, but I think if you look at the top 3 wide receivers in the league, they're either good route runners, 1, or 2, they have the best hands. Devontae Adams, he's got tremendous speed, no question, but he's not like a 4.3 guy. He's like a 4.4 guy, 4.5 guy with great hands and can route run. And that's what we talk about. A.J. Brown, he wasn't a fast guy when he came into the league. He has great hands, and he's a great route runner. And then there's guys like Julio Jones that are just beastly athletic, who just are freaks of nature, okay? And that's those guys, they don't always work. They don't pan out. It's the guys that can route run and catch. Those are the guys. All the speed in the world. Yes, speed beats everything, but speed doesn't do everything. As you asked Denzel Mims on the New York Jets, who is 6'3", 4'3".
Going out for Mims.
Yes, and I love Denzel Mims. I really do. But let's be honest, he's got he's got pan hands, okay, including your friend over there, the tight end for the Giants.
Ingram. Yeah.
Ingram.
Well, I don't want to be the tight end for the Giants anymore. But
another guy who came into the league.
Kittle.
Tight end, tight end that can run a 4.4 and can't catch. He couldn't catch a football from you. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It really is people that can catch and route.